I want to thank both of you for coming on to podcast number three. From my personal perspective and what I've seen, it looks like the pigeon hobby is dominated by men. That's why I wanted to get a couple of ladies and wanted to get your points and view of the hobby.
I'm Kirsten House Connect. I'm a veteran, disabled veteran, so I have a lot of time on my hands right now. And just a little over a year ago, I moved out to Dover, PA, which is close to Harrisburg, if you don't know where that is already, to be closer to my mom. And once we moved out here, not only did I get a lot more garden space, but I could finally have outdoor birds. Now, unfortunately, I live someplace that has very firm rules against chickens, which annoys me. But they didn't say a word about pigeons. So uh, I could finally have pigeons, which I couldn't have when I lived in the city. It wouldn't have been safe for them. I mean, there wasn't a law saying I couldn't have them. Other people do, but it wouldn't have been safe. So I basically dove in, working on getting my loft set up, and then got too many pigeons.
My name is Nicole Daniel. Most people call me Nikki. I live in Brandon, Vermont. I raise homers. That's all we have at this point. I started out with tipplers, but they have moved on to another home, and we focus on homers exclusively. My husband is in this gig with me. We kind of have separate focus and kind of each pull our weight in different directions. So, but it's definitely an interest for both of us. I got into the hobby with a pigeon walking through my garage, and then that was just temporary. Then the actual kind of build lofts around this pigeon was an injured young squab that I took in, who unfortunately took off on me one day. But we've since continued to expand a lot. We built our first loft inside of our garage, and there's a separate section for loft flyers, and then a breeding section off to the side. And then we added another loft out back, which we use for non-flyers, one reason or another, and that's separated by gender. And then my husband is currently in process of building an 8x8 young bird loft so that he can start racing this year. Yeah, I'm into the racing. I help with training and tossing and those kinds of things. My focus, though, is more, beyond general health and those kinds of things. I kind of stumbled into this because I am a nurturer and a rehabber by nature. So I tend to do a lot of the nurturing parts. And I've bred and raised chickens for many years. So I had a good working knowledge of breeding and genetics and those kinds of things when it came to chickens. So once pigeons came on board here, that really piqued my interest. So I've been doing a lot of studying about genetics, modifiers, what they do or don't do, both visually and for the bird as far as performance-wise and those kinds of things.
How many pairs are you working with, and is it just homing pigeons that you're keeping at the moment?
Yeah, we just have homers now. So actively in our breeding loft, we have 4 pair right now. Our little breeding section has 6 boxes. So we have 4 boxes going right now. Because of size, we're definitely doing some real deliberate breeding at the beginning here. And we tried to get, some in that maybe get a round or 2 out, and then a whole new crew is going to come in once the youngers are weaned and moved along. So we had 2 that are already weaned and moved out. Their parents have babies that are a couple weeks old now, and we actually pulled their 3rd round of eggs and have them under a foster.
Right now I have 11 pairs breeding actively. Like I said, because of the fact that we had some oops with, I thought that was a segregated loft, and it wasn't. And also the fact that I already kind of acknowledged that because I was new, I'm brand new. And because I hadn't constructed my lofts, there's a lot of, boy, I wish I'd known then what I know now. I constructed my lofts very nicely. The pigeons are comfortable in them, but it doesn't make them easy to manage. So because of that, I have more bird pairs paired up and breeding than would be ideal.
So are either of you using droppers for your racing homers?
Well,
I'm dying to get some. Yeah,
Because
it's
that would be a different breed then.
yeah. I think
I
that's the only way
probably
I'm going to
will
be
at
able to
some point.
have. Yeah, I'm a sucker for a satinette. I've I have a
I
thing
think,
for feathered feet and spotty
yeah,
birds.
The muffs.
Um,
Yeah.
so the feathered feet on the
The
satinets.
muffs. My other question now is how much money have both of you invested into racing and into your pigeons? Because I know you're getting pedigree birds and so on and so forth. And also, like, can you maybe tell us,
oh,
some of the family lines that these birds are coming from?
you want to go first, Nicole?
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to state straight up, I got insanely lucky on a lot of my birds. Several local people, one of them, Gary Moore, literally gave me birds that I would never have been able to afford. Frank McLaughlin, who I'm sure everybody knows from his YouTube videos, if they don't know him from his racing, absolutely great guy, has spent a lot of time answering my questions. He gave me a pair of birds for pretty much nothing but the shipping costs. They're birds I couldn't have afforded. So I got some bloodlines that I literally could not have paid for. I also got lucky on 2 auctions. In one case, I was the only bidder on a bird. Just it had to do with the time of year it was. And I got a bird that is at least a $400 bird for $50, and then I had to pay more than that for shipping.
Wow.
In another case, I was asking questions of the seller and explaining I'm very new. I don't, know a lot about this, but I like the looks of the bird in the picture. And I was asking a question about it that probably, at least showed I'd been paying attention. And I won that auction. I ended up paying probably $150 for that bird plus the shipping. And I would say that's probably a $700 bird. But I won the auction. I wasn't the only bidder, but the other person didn't. I guess they didn't want a cockbird, and that was a cockbird. I didn't want a cockbird. I wanted a hen, but the bloodline was too good to pass up. And because I'd been talking to the guy, and that's cousin Vinny's Loft, he was trying to help out a new person. So I did legitimately win the auction, but he also sent a hen to go with that cock.
Wow. It's very nice of him.
A lot of this is one of the things I mean about, and Nicole has the same thing. People are very supportive of new people entering the hobby.
Yeah.
We really want new people entering the hobby. And you will get given birds that the experienced fanciers probably couldn't even buy because people are trying to help you get into it. So have I spent money on birds? Yes, I have. I absolutely did. Among other things, I went down to somebody who was closing out their whole loft owing to a divorce. They're selling the house. That means moving everything, including the lofts. They've sold everything. They
Was
found
that the
out I
guy
was
at the
new.
show?
No, no, that was
No?
a
Okay.
different case. He was also
Okay.
getting a divorce. Yes, that
Correct,
was a
correct.
guy. I got
At
one
the
bird
Reading
from.
show. Oh, okay.
I got one bird from that guy. No, this was Bayville Loft in New Jersey. He was selling out. He was a major combine winner. I couldn't afford his breeding birds, which were mostly Gannis family loft birds. But he ended up selling me 12 of his young bird racing team, which are those bloodlines. They weren't pedigreed, but they were those bloodlines.
Mhm.
And I got them, and he tossed in the feeders, the wood feeders, and a whole bunch of nesting bowls, and a whole bunch of other
Nice.
stuff that he didn't think he'd need. And I got all of that for about $200.
Wow. That's great. That's a
And
steal.
yeah, it was an absolute steal. But it's one of the things that contributed to me having too many birds, because I kept getting. I paid for
It's
those
an
birds, and that's
addiction.
12. Yeah, it was like Pokemon. I paid for those 12 birds. Those I went and bought. And they didn't
Mhm.
have pedigrees, but they were fantastic bloodlines. And you could tell they were really good birds. And then not long after that, I got gifted 12 birds from Gary, and those were pedigreed birds that were amazingly good. So suddenly I had 24 birds. I didn't have room for 24 birds.
Mhm.
So very suddenly I'm having to make a decision and going, okay, a lot of these non-pedigreed birds are going to go to a different beginner. And I'm going to expand my loft now because I have more birds and I don't want to get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
So, but as far as spending money goes, I have spent probably far less than most people, unless you count moving out here and buying the whole house, because, of course, I couldn't keep pigeons in the city. I can tell you that if I had paid what even half of those birds are worth, I could buy this house again.
Now, how about you, Nicole?
Well, kind of the opposite, actually. I've until recently have spent very, very little money on birds. I don't have a lot of, pretty much everybody that I have in breeding, I would consider outcrossings. Yes, I have some of the names in my lines, but nothing pure and strong enough for me to throw names around. You know what I mean? Yeah, some of my birds have Muleman, and some of my birds, most of my birds are all outcrossed. The first 4 homers that I bought were, I think they were $5 a piece.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that probably sounds insane on a lot of levels, and it is kind of odd. But there's also kind of, the back piece of this is Vermont is a really interesting place, and we're a lot different than a lot of other places. Um, there are some places where rural is rural, but you don't go very far until you hit someplace urban. For Vermont's just we're all rural, and so our racing club is really small, and we're all spread out. I mean, I'm out 2 hours south of where my birds are supposed to be, trucked and out. Um, so anyway, um, small clubs. There's not a lot of people, doing. We don't have a big competition. A lot of people spending a lot of money on big bloodlines and whatever. So our first birds came from the elders, so to speak, of the racing club around here, and some of them picked out some really nice birds for us that were maybe the offsprings of birds that had won some local races for them the year before, or those kinds of things. So yeah, I've actually spent surprisingly little until I just bought my husband a pair of birds that are they descend from bandit who is one of those big names. And it was like a 19-time champion, whatever. So anyway, that was just a whim because it's my 20th anniversary. And let's face it, what else does my husband want besides pigeons?
Wow, nice.
So that was my big splurge. I know it's probably, I know there's like a whole sequence, like, wood and silver and paper and all of those things for certain anniversaries. But for us, 20th anniversary gift is pigeons.
Pigeons. A pair of pigeons. That's beautiful.
Pair of pigeons. Yep. Some beautiful little grizzles. I'm excited to have them here. They're being shipped
Great.
in from Utah. They'll probably be old enough in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. They're
Oh,
just
wow.
babies.
Okay, nice. How much
Yeah.
did that cost, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah.
Or would you
Probably
rather
about,
not share?
no. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Probably about $400. So far, I haven't had any issues. I mean, again, my husband kind of is on board and we do things as a team. So, the first racing club meeting that we attended together.
Mhm.
But I tend to be a bit more outspoken and talkative person than my husband. So I make my presence a little bit more known. I've not had any negativity or any, gotten any feeling like I'm a woman, I'm incapable, or I don't know what I'm doing because I'm a woman or anything to that effect. I think it's just so ingrained. I've commented a few times to different people that I see in comment sections on Facebook posts or whatever, or I hear people say at little meetups or whatever, people talk about true pigeon man, and you're a real pigeon man. I ain't ever gonna be a pigeon man. I don't have to be. But I've never taken it as an insult. I just think it's
Got it.
just another nod to
Yeah.
that's kind of always how it's been, and people are surprised. But I don't want to come across as arrogant or anything to that effect. But if I'm going to enter a conversation, I'm the type of person who already knows enough to um,
Get
I
your
belong at the
message and your
table.
point across.
If I'm
Yeah,
going to be at the table, I'm not just show up there and say, hi, what are we doing? When I sit at the
exactly.
table,
It's
I've
business.
already, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm new to this. But like I said, I've been raising and rescuing different animals for years. My husband and I
Mhm.
bred chinchillas for years. That's a whole other story. But so maybe I had never done things, but I found really quickly on, like I said, I started out by rescuing an injured squab. Um, and then I, took videos of myself bag feeding and those kinds of things. And I realized there are people who've been doing this for years that have never hand fed. So
Mhm.
that, and I mean, not that it leveled the playing ground, but I realized that, there are people who definitely know their stuff and are a fountain of information. But once I got to a certain point, I felt like, all right, I, I at least deserve to be respected in this conversation. How's that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
some of the things that are my interest and my focus are different than some other people's. So, like I said, I have a really interesting background and working knowledge in genetics, and that's something that really uh, fascinates me. And there are people that have no interest in those kinds of things. You know what I mean? As far as the technicalities of it, whether I'm talking about um, color modifiers and those kinds of things. I have one friend that every time he said, "You're talking Greek to me again," and I don't speak Greek. Um,
Yeah.
so, um, but he knows things about pigeons that I still haven't come across, because he's been doing things for years and just doing it a little differently or focused differently than I have, or whatnot. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely a male dominated sport, but I've never been felt like I was less because I'm a woman. Just,
You
oh,
never felt inferior.
yeah, yes. Again, the first club meeting we went to, it was, kind of jokingly addressed like, there's women here. And ironically, I wasn't the only lady. Somebody else's partner was there as
Mhm.
well. But yeah, you can tell this is new. This isn't just the guys kicking around. So yeah.
That's great. All right.
I've had a little bit different experience, possibly just because I'm in a more crowded area. Um, I'm not far from the Lancaster pigeon shows, for instance. So even though I'm not right there, I'm close. And I'm just close enough to some of the really big pigeon fancying areas to be at the fringes of some of the politics of it all. Every group has politics. I don't care what it is. Every group, I belong to costuming groups and gardening groups and textile groups and jewelry. If it's a big enough group, you will have something going on in it. Um,
Absolutely.
it's just like if you've got a big enough group, you will have at least one absolute saint and at least one absolute sinner. As a friend of mine would say, you'll have the bad apple. You'll have the person who shouldn't be allowed near everybody else. It's a fact of being human.
Mhm.
But I have run into some people who definitely did not seem to understand that this is my hobby and my husband is just supporting me. It was, the constant, oh, this couple are doing no.
That's just you.
Or they would be like, oh, so oh yes, this couple sent their bird to the. I got that with the video. This couple sent their bird to the one Loft. Kirsten and her husband. I didn't get his name. No, we didn't send anything. I did. My husband doesn't even know what I. He just knows I sent something because I went to the mail. Um, and I understand that because most of the time when you have women in the sport, their husbands are in the sport. They probably got involved because their husband was in the sport. That's not true of us, but I think that's what people expect. So I've run
It's a
into that so much.
stereotype, right?
Yeah, it's the
Yep.
stereotype that if you're into pigeons, it's because of your husband, or
Mhm.
at the very least, you're both into pigeons, right? And I'm like, my husband is confused, but he is going to support me because it's my interest.
Mhm.
He's not that interested in the pigeons, actually. Um, he just like my wife's hobby. Yes, I will support her because he's good that way. But
Unconditionally.
um, there's a lot of that. I get a lot of, is your husband coming in to the meeting? No, he's not here. He's not coming. First of all, if he's coming into a clubhouse and there's going to be birds, he'd have to wear a respirator just because there's birds in the clubhouse. And secondly, he didn't feel like getting in the car and driving down to the club meeting. It's not his thing. He's not into pigeons. And they'll look at me, even though they know that by this point, but they still keep forgetting. They don't mean any harm by it. It's not a I'm excluding you. It's just, oh, right. You're
I I
you're by
guess it's
yourself as a woman.
yeah, I guess it's something new for them, right? Like something
Yeah,
they're not
it's new.
used to, and
It
that's all it is, and
exactly.
it's gonna take maybe
It's
some
it's
time
more
for them to
it's
fully
more just that
understand it.
it's new. It's unusual. And it is unusual because even if, normally even if I came into pigeons, my husband would also be into pigeons. It's just not the case in this particular case. I
Mhm.
have run into some people who have either insisted on treating me like I'm an idiot or have insisted on treating me like I don't know the things I actually do know. And a lot of that I initially put down to the fact that I am very, very new. So there's a lot I don't know. But sometimes it's just somebody is being rude. And
It's
that
just the
has
ego,
almost
right?
always been online. It's almost always been online. It's never been in person. The
Mhm.
people in person have always been wonderful. And most of the people online have been wonderful. But, you're always going to have somebody who's just got to be better than somebody else. And it's, I have a female avatar on my Facebook posts. It's pretty obvious. And, somebody's always going to be that way. I try not to let it bother me.
what are some of the goals within the hobby of pigeon keeping for you?
Hmm.
Nicole?
Well, I mean, overall, my goal is to I, I want to maintain a healthy, happy flock. Um, and I think I've kind of met that goal, but I think it's an ongoing goal as well. Can't lose sight of those things. Um, and I'm not just talking about things like proper ventilation and whatever. Um, I think in general, the health and happiness, their well-being. I mean, you can see it. If you've seen unhappy and unhealthy birds, you clearly see the difference when you know a bird's healthy and happy. Um, so yeah, overall health and happiness is my first goal. Um, then beyond that, I do have some kind of some color projects that I'm working on, um, because that was kind of my first intent. I didn't jump into this with the intent and plans to race. That just kind of became part of it. I am fascinated by color genetics. So as I had mentioned, I have a couple projects going on that are my focus right now. I'm working on some modeled, um, and I have, like I said, some indigo and some yellow and some other things in my line. But that's I'm kind of focusing more specific goals on color breeding this year myself, and as our loft in general, my husband and myself, to actually get some racing against some other birds to be officially uh, getting our birds into club races this year.
As far as genetics, my goal is to learn more about the genetics. Um, that's something that I did not know anything much about before getting into racing pigeons. It wasn't something that was a big part of my historical studies, for instance. So to me, the genetics of how the colors and things like that inherit, that's all new. So I'm coming at it a little bit cold, and I'd really like to understand more of it. I do like some of the interesting patterns. I'm really into splashes and things. And some of that's just the fact that I can tell them apart as opposed to, it's like, oh great, it's one more blue bar. I can't tell which bird is which. Um, for me, my goals are to have a lot of birds that can compete well. Um, of course, I want to win. I mean, who doesn't want to win? But if I can get birds that are finishing well, reliably, that are good, sound, solid competitors because they fly well, because they're fed well, and they're not too fat because I overfeed, apparently, which I didn't realize I was overfeeding. Um, I want to do that. I want to end up being somebody that is a serious competitor, and I'd love to win a couple of races. I would really love to do that. The odds are not for me in one loft racing because your odds are better if you're sending a lot of birds. Obviously, there's more chance that one of your really good birds will be the ones that goes. But at least with the club races, I've got a better odds. I would like to win. I would like to be able to say I bred that winner. Other than that, um, I like watching them fly. So I like the birds. I've always liked pigeons. So just having them, taking care of them, that's kind of a goal into itself. But the real goal is to have birds who can fly and know that they're going to come home safe and sound. And if one of them can come home safe and sound with a prize winner check, hey, so much the better. Other than that, with goals short term, it's mostly I'd like to get to know more about the color genetics. So I'm probably going to end up pestering Nicole after all this. Well, not tonight, later.
Anytime.
Last question I have is, what do you think, can be done to get more females involved in this hobby?
Well, first of all, I'm going to honestly state that I think the publicity around One Loft races will help, because it's an unfortunate fact that in most households, women are not just working, they're also doing an awful lot of the work at home, which means they don't have as much time to do things like training. So if they're able to raise birds and send them to a One Loft race or a futurity race, it's going to be easier for them. But the other thing is pretty strictly a case of, if you get the publicity about pigeon fancying, whether it's racing or just keeping pigeons or breeding the feather patterns or whatever else, out to more people and kind of get the publicity out there, the marketing out there, you will automatically get more women, more girls who are going to find out it exists. I think from my own experience, this is just my personal experience. It's not scientific survey or anything. I've seen a lot more women who were passionate about something like the city pigeons, just liked the pigeons, than I've seen guys, than I've seen boys that were. That's not to say I haven't seen boys that were really interested in them. But I think if we can put pigeon keeping as a hobby, and especially racing, but not only racing, if we can put that in front of more people that aren't already in pigeon families, that aren't already getting exposed to it because of their uncle or whatever, we're going to get more mixed genders, just because more people are hearing about us. So part of this would just be, we really have to get the hobby out in front of people who aren't being brought up in the hobby. You need to get pigeon racing, pigeon keeping, pigeon breeding, whatever else, in front of more, for lack of a better word, civilians. People who aren't already in it. People whose dad didn't raise pigeons. I've seen many more girls that are interested in pigeon racing that were, or at least pigeon keeping, asking me about it because I'm talking about it on my Facebook page. And somebody who was never before connected to pigeons in any way is suddenly getting pigeon content from me.
Are these your are these your friends and family that are on your
Friends
Facebook that
and
see it?
friends of friends.
A lot of people aren't aware.
Yeah.
They aren't aware of pigeon keeping as a hobby or racing as a sport. And pigeons have a bad rap. They really do. People think, that stereotypical rats with wings, filthy feral animals and whatever, and that's their knowledge and understanding of pigeons. That's their their base that they're going off of. They don't realize how beautiful the birds can be, how there are different colors, how intelligent of a creature they are, sensitive, how they can bond. We think parrots are the fun creatures, and chickens. Oh my goodness, chickens the last decade or so. Holy moly, have those become a craze. But pigeons haven't gotten there yet. It's still, people don't see it, don't realize it, aren't familiar with it, whatever.
Wanna thank both of you for, your time and coming on and talking. And I hope to invite you guys back on next time so we can catch up and see where you are and how far you've progressed in the racing scene. I'm excited to see how you do as well. So thanks once again. Have a good one. Bye.